Chapter 11:16. When she calmly looked at the huge whirlpool, the black whirlpool was like the huge mouth of a monster. In front of this huge whirlpool, humans would naturally feel powerless. It was as if they were facing something terrifying. She could even imagine what terrifying things would surge out from behind the whirlpool. As she approached, the vibration of the devourer became more obvious. The law array point jumped out from her body. For the first time, the huge disc said something that did not conform to the law: "You have to go in." It was an affirmative sentence, not a question. Xiao Jin glanced at it. The law had its own consciousness. Of course, it did not completely belong to Xiao Jin. It could choose whether to go or not. However, the array point could not form a connection with the world on the other side. The disc suddenly expanded above the whirlpool, covering the huge whirlpool. She suddenly felt a pulling sensation in her mind. The devourer seemed to be frantically trying to go over. It clearly did not have such fluctuations 10,000 years ago. The devourer brought her body closer to the whirlpool step by step. The shocking space-tearing ability had begun to appear. It was another world, a world that humans could not go to. If they went, they would die. She could not pay any price, and there was no space array point. She should not go over. However, she felt that she had to go over. The devourer also had to go over. It was she who wanted to go over. In an instant, it was as if the long river of time had passed in her mind. Some things disappeared very quickly. The words on the disc changed again. Go. You should know. The law was guarding there. It had no intention of leaving. It enveloped the entire whirlpool as if it was the last guardian. Xiao Ji nodded and looked at the depths of the whirlpool. The ocean was screaming. Because of the high-speed rotation, the vibrations caused by it seemed like something was issuing a huge threat through the curtain of the ocean. No one could survive inside. If they entered the whirlpool, they would be torn into pieces in the blink of an eye. She knew that she should not go, but she knew that she would be fine. Someone had already paid the price for her. She blinked and then smiled softly and plunged into the depths of the whirlpool. She was too small. In comparison, the human body was like a speck of dust. She couldn't cause any vibrations. After entering, the vortex didn't seem to have even the slightest ripple. It was still spinning. Under the ocean, there seemed to be all kinds of fish swimming by the side of the whirlpool from time to time. They seemed to be unaffected, and the weather was as usual. No one noticed what was wrong, just as no one would have thought that someone had entered another world through the vortex. Thousands of miles away, Song Yanqing, who was in the middle of a discussion, suddenly froze when he sensed that something was wrong. His face was still the same, but the light in his eyes dimmed in an instant. Then, he suddenly fell on the table, as if he had fainted. Lord Song. Young Master Song. Lord Song, what's wrong? What's wrong with you? The people around him screamed in horror. No one had expected that Song Yanqing would suddenly faint. This was something that had not happened for a long time. Or rather, even if his body was weak in the past, he had never suddenly fainted. Chapter 11:17. There was only darkness in front of her. No, that's not right. To be more precise, Xiao Jin felt that she didn't have a human body. She was like duckweed, or perhaps she was like something else. She seemed to be in a relaxed state, floating in this deep and boundless space. Dark, oppressive, cold. It was the color of this place. This was different from what Xiao Jin imagined. She passed through the entrance of the space, and nothing painful happened. The Rakshasa world was also very different from what she imagined. Here, there were no demons that blotted out the sky as she imagined. It was unbelievably quiet. There was no color in the surroundings, only pure darkness, as if it was covered in a thick fog. Only some different shadows occasionally flashed by. Xiao Jin felt that she wasn't like a human at the moment. She could see everything around her, but she also found that she couldn't seem to see herself. She didn't know what state she was in. She felt that as she entered the Rakshasa world, when she stayed here, there would always be some fragmented fragments in her mind. The fragmented memories seemed to be slowly piecing together. She didn't know how long she had been floating in this silent and dark world. If it were someone else, they would feel oppressed, suffocated, or even panicked in a few minutes. She just felt a little confused. There was no aura of the array points on her body, and even the devouring force had disappeared. She didn't know where she was floating to. Although the surrounding scenery was unchanged, she felt that she was moving. She kept moving forward. After some time, she felt a low roar coming from around her. It seemed to be the ferocious roar of a demon. She seemed to look up. A huge demon's body slid over her. It didn't see her and went straight past. If it weren't for this demon, she wouldn't even feel any aura or color in this world. And the demon didn't seem to see her. There was an even worse situation. Xiao Jin didn't have a body. She was just a consciousness. Her consciousness came to the Rakshasa world. A faint sigh came from a distant place, bringing with it emptiness. Quiet, cold, and hoarse like 10,000 years ago. Xiao Jin's mind stirred, and he felt his vision suddenly widen. A person suddenly appeared in front of him. To be exact, it was the silhouette of a person. When the silhouette reached out to her, she felt that she had a physical body. She subconsciously reached out and saw her own hand. In the dark environment, she was like a gathering of starlight. Her entire body was emitting a moving radiance as she appeared bit by bit. In such a dark world, her appearance was abrupt and outrageous. That bright color could almost destroy the surrounding darkness. A hand reached out from the rolling fog. The hand looked like it was made of white bones, and it was frightening. However, the moment it came into contact with Xiao Jin, it gradually regained its former color. The fingers were long and slender, white like jade, and the joints were clearly defined. It was Song Yanqing's hand. When he appeared from the thick fog, his original form could not be seen clearly, but when he came into contact with Xiao Jin, he returned to his original appearance. He looked at her, as if he had been longing for her for 10,000 years. His eyes were only on her. He sighed slightly, and there was a hoarse longing. You still came. After an unknown amount of time, so long that his concept of time was blurred, she still appeared. Chapter 11:18. Song Yanqing. She blinked, but she realized that his body would sometimes turn into white bones, and the moment she looked at him, it would instantly recover. Such a change should be somewhat painful. But he didn't even blink. She touched his face. It was cold, but real. She thought of the Song Yanqing in the modern world and was a little puzzled. As if seeing through her thoughts, Song Yanqing said softly, "That's also me. My consciousness will sometimes go out, but when I'm resting over there, I have to come back. In that world, I can feel the existence of this world, and my memories will be blurry. Only here, I'm complete." Because his true consciousness was in the Rakshasa world. He looked up at Xiao Jin with a smile. He was still as gentle as ever, as calm and elegant as if he could amaze the years. "I just missed you too much." Because he missed her too much, he still used a powerful thought to create his own identity in that world even though he had already been tortured. His body had long dissipated completely, and he was only a consciousness now. When Song Yanqing was awake, he was Song Yanqing, but he couldn't replace the memories of the Rakshasa world. Therefore, the Song Yanqing in the modern world was him, and the one here was also him. It was just that he was more complete and had all the memories. Qiao Jin instantly understood. In other words, her awakening wasn't a coincidence. Song Yanqing knew that she had been resurrected, so he created the same identity to wait for him in the modern world. However, there were some things that he couldn't control. His ability to use was already at its limit. And this was enough to consign him to eternal damnation. What exactly did you see during the sacrifice 10,000 years ago? Qiao Jin had always wanted to ask this question. Now that she saw him, she could finally ask. But when she looked at the person in front of her and saw his body turn into white bones when she couldn't touch him, she recalled what Li Jiao had said in the past. He was in the Rakshasa world, and he was in great pain. She didn't know what kind of pain it was, but it didn't stop her heart from hurting as if it was being torn apart when she saw him. Actually, she didn't really have these emotions. She had always been an indifferent person. The evolution of various emotions was more like a learning process. He pulled her into his arms and sighed. What do you think I saw? Actually, what I saw was not what you imagined. He said, Jean, didn't you already expect what I saw? Have we been marked by the heavens and earth from the moment we were born? Everything in this world counters each other, and if you want to obtain something, you have to pay a price. You should understand why we are the only ones with such an imprint in our minds. There were so many people in this world that everyone knew the price of karma. However, there were still many people who were involved. Mo Feihuan was able to disregard the lives of so many people for his own selfish desires, but he was still able to make use of the power of the array formation to take advantage of the lives of others and live well. This shouldn't have happened. He should pay the price for what he had done, but karma seemed to be unable to see him. Only Qiao Jin was engraved with a soul imprint that went deep into her bones. She had to pay the corresponding price for everything she did. It was as if she was incomparably powerful, but it seemed that it was really unfair to her. And why did she feel so unfair? Chapter 11:19. Whether it was fair or not was another matter. It was just that everything in this world seemed to be calculated clearly with her. Her memories were recovering bit by bit. Qiao Jin lowered her eyes in silence. She had already begun to see some things in her mind. However, these things did not exist 10,000 years ago. Even earlier than that, she seemed to have seen the passage of the long river of time, the prosperity and decline of all things, the extinction of species. She had seen a lot, and she had also seen the changes in this world. It was far from just 10,000 years, but many years. It could be 1,000,000 years, or countless years. These things existed in her mind as if they were just a distant memory. She did not remember, but she had never thought about why. It turned out that she only understood now. As long as she remembered, she could instantly understand some things. Karma is harsh on us. Song Yanqing held her in his arms. Although the things outside had already sensed that something was wrong and began to roar and run over, Song Yanqing's voice was still so gentle and clear. It's because our existence requires a price. Qiao Jin's hands trembled. Countless things flashed through her mind. She only looked at Song Yanqing and seemed to smile, as gentle as him. The Rakshasa world is our price. Because if she wanted to exist, she had to pay a price. She did not give up some things. In the end, she had to pay the price. Qiao Jin only looked at him and held his hand tightly. You don't have to pay this for me. This is what I should bear. It's not the same. Song Yanqing looked at her. His eyes were as gentle as water and as bright as the moon. I didn't understand this before. I didn't understand why you wanted to enter this world. I didn't understand what you wanted to see. But perhaps from the moment I chose to step into the human world like you, I understood. I don't know what you want, but I only want you. From the moment we were conscious, wasn't it? Through his eyes, even in this dark Rakshasa world, there seemed to be the most brilliant color in his eyes. Xiao Jin finally understood the past. It was not just about spiritual psyche masters, nor was it about the Rakshasa world. At that time formation point said, who doesn't desire the beauty of the world? In fact, it was already telling her that she was not human. In other words, the 4 array points were not just array points. They were independent and did not belong to any array master or spiritual reader. They were not array points, but the existence of natural laws. However, just like how there were spiritual readers in this world, they were actually existences that suppressed spiritual readers. Because all things need to counter each other. Since ancient times, Devour had never responded to her. She was devouring. She was devouring, and she was devouring. If she wanted to enter this world to experience it, she would have to pay a price. The price was the Rakshasa realm. This was karma's punishment for her and Song Yanqing. The reason why she was suppressed so much was because she only needed to maintain the order of the world. Once she entered the world, she would definitely be restrained. All the answers lay in the Rakshasa realm. Now that she had entered the Rakshasa realm, it meant that she had to make a choice. Without hesitation, she grabbed Song Yanqing's hand and said, I want you to come with me. Song Yanqing asked, do you know what you're giving up? Xiao Jin did not hesitate. Anything in front of you doesn't matter. Chapter 11:20. When the person in front of her heard this sentence, his smile was very soft. That pair of eyes seemed to be filled with starlight, only blooming for her. She felt that the most beautiful scenery she had ever seen in her life was probably his eyes. In the dark and oppressive environment, there seemed to be something surging, and countless forces came from the surroundings. He gently pushed her away. You should go. But she didn't let go. You have to go with me. Song Yanqing sighed slightly. Jean, but you don't know what price you have to pay. His voice was so gentle, as if it contained the longing of thousands of years. We have been together for a long time. If I stay here, you can still find other ways. At that time, when you wanted to step into the human world, I asked you, what if one day you regret it? This world won't give you a second chance. Song Yanqing was the space. In countless years, they were born together, not knowing when they were born. That time was so long that even they began to blur. They were all conscious. Since their birth, slowly, they had their own consciousness. What was bound to them might be the responsibilities they were supposed to bear. Time, devouring, rules, space. In fact, they were all the basic laws of the world. When the laws had their own consciousness, no one knew what would happen. When Xiao Jin chose to become a human, losing her memory was her punishment, and the karma engraved in her bones was a warning to her. However, she still had supreme power, which was also God's love for her. Because she was special. But special also had to bear the price she should bear. They had been together since birth, even when they became human. Xiao Jin only looked at Song Yanqing. I don't regret my choice to step into the human world today, but I also know that all this shouldn't be borne by you. Song Yanqing chose to come to the human world like her, so he would receive the same punishment as her. But at the same time, he chose to make a sacrifice for Xiao Jin. Probably when he came to the Rakshasa world, he already knew the responsibilities and shackles he had to bear. He was a space, so it was not difficult for him to cross over to another world, but he still had to endure the torture. The Rakshasa world knew that he was special and did not want him to leave. This was because the Rakshasa world was their punishment, and if Song Yanqing stayed here, he would become nourishment for the Rakshasa world. Laws were all lonely from the moment they were born with consciousness, but she and Song Yanqing were lucky. She grabbed Song Yanqing's hand and said softly, "Let's go." Her grip was very tight and she never let go. Song Yanqing still looked at her gently and sighed helplessly, "Okay." The ferocious cries of the demons came from all directions, and this oppressive space finally revealed its original appearance. The demons rolling in the thick fog were probably enough to give people nightmares for several days and nights. Xiao Jin pulled Song Yanqing and felt that she had turned into a consciousness again, but she could feel that Song Yanqing was by her side. At the moment when she broke through the entrance, she still felt a push. Song Yanqing wanted to push her over. Because both of them knew that although they had recovered their memories, the laws themselves were not allowed to become human. The price they had to pay was far more than that. If even Song Yanqing went over, then the entrance to the Rakshasa world would open in advance. 10,000 years ago, because they had no memories, that was the beginning of the initial punishment. Now that everything had to be redone, the punishment was brought forward. Chapter 11:21. Xiao Jin, however, did not choose to let go. His usually cold face was now filled with determination. "Do you know why Rule chose to follow me?" Song Yanqing paused for a moment. Xiao Jin, however, chuckled. "When you first came with me, I already knew that today's ending would be like this. I used the origin formation to lock away my past." It was her past as a devourer. Xiao Jin said, "It's fine as long as I give up." Song Yanqing's pupils contracted. "But you will die." She was a devourer, a law that had been born since the beginning of the world. If she gave up, no one knew what would happen. There was a high probability that she would completely disappear. If she became a devourer again, she would really lose all of her memories. At that time, she would become a law without memories, maintaining the order of the world. Xiao Jin said, "If you don't come with me, I might not be able to stop Rakshasa realm in the end. It's the same choice." Song Yanqing, he fell silent. She leaned closer to him. She was clearly conscious, but she still left a light kiss on his cold face. "You did so much for me, so it's time for me to do the same for you. I won't die. As long as the price is enough, Rule will be happy to exchange with me. It will give me a life." Perhaps she would become a normal person, or perhaps she would lose all of her memories, but she would be able to be with Song Yanqing. Actually, as long as they were together, who would care about these things? He did not say anything. His white face was filled with helplessness, just like his original choice. In the end, he still chose to cross through space with Xiao Jin. However, their consciousnesses did not appear in the same place. However, when Xiao Jin opened her eyes, she was above the vortex. There was also a man floating in front of her. That man had a cold face, but his eyes were filled with malice. This was something that had not changed even after tens of thousands of years. "You really dared to go over." Mo Fei Huan opened his mouth coldly, but there was extreme resentment in his eyes. "Xiao Jin, even after letting you die, you still have a chance to be reborn. This world really loves you enough. Yeah, are you jealous?" The moment Xiao Jin saw Mo Fei Huan, he didn't attack him. Of course, Mo Fei Huan wasn't afraid. He had so many lives on his shoulders. If he died, those people wouldn't be able to live. Could it be that she didn't weigh the pros and cons? Instead, she softly said these words, making Mo Fei Huan's face twist for a moment. "If I die, I can still live, and I don't have to pay any price. If you want to live, you have to live like a ghost. You put in a lot of effort to maintain this face, but I can still see your true face." His face was already distorted and rotten, and he was no longer as handsome as before. The current Mo Fei Huan was just an empty shell. When he heard this, his pupils shrank, and his face was filled with hatred. Indeed, when Xiao Jin was resurrected, he did not know why she did not have to pay the price. Instead, she was still the same as before. As for himself, his 10,000 years of persistence was nothing more than a facade. Did he really not have to pay the price? Karma rebounded every day and night. Even if he used lives to fill it, it would not be enough to fill the gap. There would always be a gap. Being able to live was already the limit. As for why he dared to appear here today, he sneered. So what? You are going to die anyway. Once Rakshasa world opens, can you and Song Yanqing live? But I am different. I can truly live. Chapter 11:22. Xiao Jin only laughed faintly. He only asked, has the last corpse burial pit appeared? In truth, the corpse burial pit had no other use. The people inside were already dead. What was truly important was time. Enough time. The appearance of the corpse burial pit meant a change in the Rakshasa realm. When all 9 pits appeared, it was the time for the Rakshasa realm to break through. Mo Feihuan used human lives to fill in the formation, creating an original formation that could open the entrance to the Rakshasa realm. Shouldn't you know whether it appears or not? A mocking smile appeared in his eyes. Back then, what was the use of exchanging with the rules? 10,000 years later, these people still have to pay the price. So many people died because of you. If you hadn't closed the Rakshasa realm, these people wouldn't have died. And it was Song Yanqing who opened the Rakshasa realm back then. You are the sinners of humanity. At this moment, he still wanted to provoke Xiao Jin. What's the use of telling me this? Xiao Jin was still smiling. I am paying the price that I should pay. If I hadn't closed the Rakshasa realm back then, it would have been this world that was finished. Even without the Rakshasa realm, karma would have other ways to punish me. I only needed to carry it. But these people, including the entrance to the Rakshasa realm, were all opened by you. The people you killed, you actually want to blame it on me and Song Yanqing. Otherwise, why do you think karma erodes you and not me? The corner of Mo Feihuan's lips twitched. At this moment, there was already a change in the vortex. Song Yanqing had awakened. His consciousness had merged with this world, and he now had the consciousness of the Rakshasa realm. The seal of the Rakshasa realm was also loosening. The price of sealing it back then was not great enough. Seeing the changes below, Mo Feihuan revealed a strange smile. You see, the entrance is about to open. This world is going to be finished. As soon as he finished speaking, Song Yanqing's voice appeared out of thin air above the vortex. It seemed to have sensed his aura. After all, he had stayed in the Rakshasa realm for tens of thousands of years. His consciousness had more or less been tainted by the aura of the Rakshasa realm. Now that he had reappeared, the vortex was turbulent, and even strong winds began to blow. The sky and the surrounding tens of thousands of miles became dark. The obvious change made the various countries that were monitoring from the sky feel that something was wrong. It seemed that something outrageous was about to happen. Song Yanqing was dressed in white. When he appeared beside Xiao Jin, he held her waist and said in a low voice, "You don't need to talk nonsense with him." He had regained his memories of the past. He was noble and powerful, just like he was 10,000 years ago. He was the most respected soul master of speech in the kingdom. Powerful and incomparable. He was in existence on par with Xiao Jin. He was a man that Mo Feihuan would always have to look up to. Mo Feihuan looked at Song Yanqing like this. It was impossible to say that he was not jealous. He was even jealous of Xiao Jin, let alone Song Yanqing, who was of the same gender. He looked at Song Yanqing. Such a beautiful couple, so otherworldly that it seemed to hurt people's eyes. He looked at them and laughed crazily. You guys are about to die and you are still talking nonsense. If you have time, why don't you think about how to deal with the Rakshasa realm? Back then, you used the rules and the soul masters as the price. Everyone died in exchange for the survival of this world. This time, the soul masters are not willing. I want to see what other price you have that is worth paying. Do you think the rules will help you a second time? However, just as he finished speaking, the moment Song Yanqing's gaze shot over, he felt a sense of suffocation in his throat. Chapter 11:23. He really couldn't beat Xiao Jin and Song Yanqing. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been like a thief hiding in the dark for so many years. Using despicable methods and the lives of countless people in exchange for their feeble existence. He had never dared to face these two people head-on. Even when he first found out about the existence of Song Yanqing's consciousness, he could only use some methods to deal with Song Yanqing, and not directly kill him. Even if Song Yanqing didn't have the slightest ability at that time. He didn't dare. Song Yanqing's birth was absolutely not an accident. He knew Song Yanqing was in the Rakshasa world, but he didn't dare to gamble. He was afraid that directly killing this modern body would provoke Song Yanqing. He didn't want to experience the terrifying power of a spiritualist. Even if they were separated by space, he didn't doubt that the man's anger could kill him. Now, Song Yanqing only cast a glance over, so casually, but he felt a suffocating pressure. Hissing sounds came from his throat, and he couldn't stop struggling. If you kill me, you won't have the ability to. Right now, he still had the lives of so many people on his body. If Song Yanqing killed him, he would have to bear the corresponding price. When the time came, how could he have the ability to intercept the Rakshasa world again? Xiao Jin waved her hand lightly, and only pressed Song Yanqing's palm. It's okay. I'll do it. She looked at Mo Feihuan, and suddenly revealed a smile that made Mo Feihuan's hair stand on end. In any case, I'm going to give up anyway. Before I give up, I have to at least use up all that can be used up. A tremendous pressure attacked Mo Feihuan, and he felt as if his entire being was being imprisoned. Waves of vitality were flowing out of his body, and Xiao Jin's cold words. I said, as long as you appear in front of me, I'll definitely kill you. Do you really think I don't have a way to deal with you? In the past, you were hiding and knew how to preserve your life. Do you think that because the Rakshasa world came and you think I'm finished, you have no scruples? I'll kill you before I'm done for. 10,000 years ago, Mo Feihuan's appearance was nothing more than cause and effect. He was the cause. The Rakshasa realm was the one that could destroy Xiao Jin. But to normal people, Mo Feihuan was an evil person. Without Mo Feihuan, there might be other people, or there might be other methods, but Mo Feihuan was definitely not a good person. Xiao Jin naturally wanted to kill him. How could this be? Mo Feihuan's eyes narrowed. He could feel the life force of those people being stripped away from him. Accompanied by this immense power, his hair, face, and teeth were all rapidly aging. His skin collapsed, and even the stench of decay emanated from him. This was his original appearance. His eyes were still wide open, and he could already see that with Xiao Jin's power, the vortex below had already sensed that she was courting death, and became even more ferocious. But she acted as if she didn't sense it, and acted first, eliminating Mo Feihuan. Even when his body fell from midair, he didn't think that Xiao Jin would really dare to kill him. She should have saved her strength to block the Rakshasa world. This was different from his initial thoughts. He thought he had no scruples, and that was why he appeared in front of her. But, perhaps he just didn't think that Xiao Jin was a little different from what he imagined. She wasn't a true array master, and after recovering her memories, she naturally had to kill Mo Feihuan first. Even if he didn't appear, she would still find him. Chapter 1124. By stripping away those people's lives, Mo Feihuan would not implicate them when he died. But at the same time, she would have to pay a huge price, but Xiao Jin was already prepared to give up. Anyway, there would be a backlash, which was not painful for her to pay. Song Yanqing held her hand and said softly, "I won't let you disappear." Xiao Jin looked at him and said nothing. She knew Song Yanqing's choice. "Do you want to be with me? Do you think I will live alone?" Song Yanqing smiled. "One is the price, two is also the price. I am also willing to give up. After all, it won't make us too sad." This was the price of karma. Xiao Jin already knew that if she made this choice, Song Yanqing would also do it. He could not let her die alone. Similarly, Xiao Jin could not let him stay in such a dark place. For 10,000 years, he had suffered the pain of being separated from his flesh. The price was too great. Song Yanqing held her hand and said in a low voice, "Everything is fair." Xiao Jin raised her head and looked at him with her bright eyes. The wind and rain were raging. The abnormality on this side had already caused fluctuations in various countries. Such a big thing happened in the Pacific Ocean, no one would not notice. At the same time, a huge disk appeared in the sky, as if it had been waiting for this moment. There were only a few words on the disk. "Are you really willing?" Even 10,000 miles away, the time matrix points looked at each other from afar. They all had consciousness, but did not yearn for the human world. Because the corresponding attributes of each law were different, the rules and time had seen through the past and the future, so they could stay out of it and perfectly shoulder their responsibilities as laws. Xiao Jin just nodded silently. In fact, she did not lose any memories at that time. What she lost was only her memories as a law. She was born 10,000 years ago. At that time, the Rakshasa world was the price for the first time. She was just too unwilling to give up, so there was a second time. Just like a baby who had only lived for a few days, she would not be willing to die. She followed the method at that time and found a chance to resurrect, but she did not know that this was the price that had been arranged long ago. The reason why the rules followed her was because they already knew of her choice. When she stepped into the mortal realm, she had looked for the rules. If she regretted it at that time, perhaps she could give up everything to change back. But now, she wanted to change in another way. That was why the rule was here. It wouldn't reject anything that made a deal with it. The disk stood in mid-air, surrounded by whistling lightning that buried it within. The demons below were roaring. It was as though they could hear their roars. They could no longer wait. They wanted to step into this world and destroy everything. What was unfinished 10,000 years ago, 10,000 years later, it had to be finished. In the distance, Mo Jiang, who was filming, felt uneasy. In fact, she wasn't the only one. Almost all the spiritual readers had a premonition. While she was eating, Xiaxi was talking to her. She looked annoyed and said, "I want to rest. Don't bother me." Xiaxi was a little speechless, but he didn't know what to say to her. Even the director was a little dumbfounded. He didn't expect this person to be so willful. She was still so arrogant even after changing the crew. She lived up to the rumors. The spirit group in the imperial capital was also inexplicably touched at this moment. He Yao, Ji Mengmeng, and the others sent messages to Xiao Jin, but there was no response. Chapter 1125. Cracks had begun to appear in the Rakshasa realm, and the majestic dark aura almost made the entire world feel it. It was a sign of another world. Xiao Jin held Song Yanqing's hand and only whispered, "If we really don't have a future, we won't let down this life." At least she had gone through it with him once. Song Yanqing didn't say anything, he just gently kissed Xiao Jin's forehead and said 3 words that couldn't be more ordinary: "I love you." Even if it was a long time ago, or a long time later, without memories and losing everything, he would not change his love for Xiao Jin. He was willing to give up everything for her, just like when he knew she stepped into the human world, he chased after her. Everything he did was just for Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin might not be called Xiao Jin, her previous name was so monotonous, but after she came to the human world, she had the name Xiao Jin. And he was called Song Yanqing. He liked this name. Even if it was changed to any other name, it would only be the name of the person who belonged to him. Rule. TSK, Xiao Jin whispered, "I am willing to give up my power of the rule of Devour to permanently close the entrance to the Rakshasa realm." Song Yanqing, who was beside her, said the same thing. Rule was shocked, because this was different from what they had discussed. He thought that these two would at least give up the human world, restore their consciousness, and maintain the order of the world. Even if they couldn't be like humans, everywhere, and get along, wouldn't that be better? However, as a rule, it couldn't say anything more. When it dawdled, a sentence appeared on the disc: "Conforms to the rules." It could be established. However, this was something it couldn't calculate. Just like how rules could change any rules, but it didn't know what would happen if Xiao Jin and Song Yanqing gave up. It belonged to the same level as Xiao Jin and Song Yanqing, and at the top, there was still karma. Cause and effect had no consciousness. It was like a standard of judgment. It only depended on whether the price one paid was enough. However, there was a greater possibility that not only would they not disappear, but even their consciousness would be wiped out. From then on, there would only be devouring and spatial laws left in the world, but no consciousness. The birth of the spiritual reader was with them. This world had possessed such extraordinary power for a very long time. As for karma, it was born from the very beginning. Only the strongest existences could come into contact with it. Now, its existence was becoming smaller and smaller because it could no longer be sensed by ordinary people. Perhaps, in the future, humans would not even be able to become spiritual readers. But they might develop better because they have their own natural laws and changes. The disc was rotating, releasing dazzling radiance. Everything was moving, as if many things were being passed over. Xiao Jin and Song Yanqing clasped their hands tightly. They felt a kind of power flowing out of their bodies at a rapid speed. At the same time, they were losing their vitality. The flowing life force turned into streams of light that surged into the turbulent vortex below, filling up the cracks that were gradually opening up. Seeing that the crack was being repaired, the demon inside let out an unwilling roar. Its claws seemed to want to tear the crack open, but it was futile. The demon's voice spread throughout the land. At this moment, it was as if all humans felt a sense of shock. They didn't know where the voice came from, but they felt extremely panicked. It was as if something terrible had jumped out, but there was no trace of it for a long time. Chapter 11:26. At the same time, in China and other places, 9 huge burial pits had been dug, and the staff were still dealing with the bones inside. A powerful force suddenly attacked, but when it reached the top of these skeletons, it gradually turned into a gentle caress. The bones turned into dust and disappeared from the burial pits. It was as if all the unwillingness had been appeased, and they disappeared into the sky. When the staff saw such a scene, they were shocked and dumbfounded. In just a moment, only empty pits were left. Those skeletons had completely disappeared. Ji Mengmeng was still dealing with the scene. When she saw this scene, she felt a strange fluctuation in her heart. She swallowed her throat and only felt a sense of emptiness in her heart. Her expression was a little complicated. She was thinking, is it Xiao Jin? No one else could do such a thing except for her. Everyone in the imperial capital also felt that something was wrong. People kept calling Xiao Jin, but no one answered. Above the vortex, the glaring light almost made all the surveillance objects lose their color. They did not know what it was or how it appeared. The unwilling roars gradually disappeared, and the crack was gradually repaired. The surging vortex became smaller and smaller, and Xiao Jin and Song Yanqing's bodies gradually became transparent. Her vision was blurry. Her mind was filled with many things in an instant, but it also seemed like she had lost many things in an instant. Devour was stripped from her body, and she could clearly feel the feeling of loss. His warm body suddenly hugged her tightly, and she heard him whisper softly in her ear, "No matter what, I'll always be by your side." It was still that gentle tone, and it had never changed. Xiao Jin curled his lips and smiled. That was the last sound. Bang! The ball of light became dazzling. In the end, there wasn't much of a shock. It was like a ball bursting, but it didn't cause any huge consequences. It only turned into a burst of light between heaven and earth, and then suddenly disappeared. The vortex finally calmed down, as if nothing had happened. It had never appeared in the first place. Vaguely, she seemed to be able to hear the rule's thoughts. "Rules, why do you think they're unwilling to come back? Time, maybe they're sick. You've been a human for too long and have developed human habits." Rule, yes, they are sick. Peace returned to the Pacific Ocean, and the surveillance devices were all back in action. They hurriedly went to check for clues, but saw that there were no signs of the storm in the Pacific Ocean. The weather was clear, and the sun was shining brightly. It was as if nothing had ever appeared. The whirlpool not long ago seemed to be their hallucination. Something had disappeared, but some things had always been there. The gloomy feeling that had been weighing on the spiritual reader master's heart for many days was suddenly swept away. He felt an indescribable sense of relief. Mo Jiang, who was thousands of miles away, had an ugly expression on his face. Fan Zhaoyao had not woken up yet. She seemed to have realized something and asked, "Did something happen?" Mo Jiang raised his head to look at the sky. There seemed to be a faint glint in his eyes. No. She did not understand those things. She only knew that someone had disappeared. Fan Zhao frowned. She did not understand Mo Jiang's mood, but she could sense that she was not in a good mood. "It's nothing. It'll get better." Chapter 11:27. Xiao Fei was sitting at home watching TV when she suddenly burst into tears. She was clearly watching a comedy. Her face instantly paled as she felt that something bad was about to happen. She immediately screamed out loud. Mu Xiangshan was shocked by her scream. Although he also felt that something bad was going to happen, he did not expect Xiao Fei to have such a big reaction. When he looked up and was about to scold her, he saw that Xiao Fei was actually crying. He was shocked. "You're crying while watching a comedy?" Xiao Fei ignored the old master's question. She suddenly felt anxious and angry. She stomped her feet and said, "I'm going to call Jean." She took out her phone with trembling hands and wanted to call Xiao Jin, but no one answered. The phone did not disappear. There was still electricity, but no one answered. It was impossible for her not to hear. Xiao Jin would bring his phone with him wherever he went. Xiao Fei cried even harder. Mu Xiangshan saw that she was not in a good state and hurriedly called Muzilian down. Then, he called Mu Jinming. Muzilian was surprised to see Xiao Fei crying so exaggeratedly. "Mom, what's wrong?" Xiao Fei said in a trembling voice, "I have a bad feeling. Something seems to have happened to your sister, Muzilian." He was a little surprised. After a while, he said in shock, "That can't be, right?" Although he said that, he immediately took out his phone and called Xiao Jin. Of course, the call did not go through. Muzillion also realized that something was wrong and immediately called Song Yanqing. Unexpectedly, even Song Yanqing did not pick up. Muzillion tried his best to comfort her. She might be fine. After all, it's not the first time she went missing. It's different, it's different. Xiao Fei screamed. She did not have such a palpitating feeling when she went missing in the past. Something must have happened to Xiao Jin. She remembered that she had said some time ago that if she disappeared one day, she would lead a good life. No, no, no. Thinking of this, Xiao Fei was really angry and anxious. For a moment, she couldn't hold it in. She was so angry that she fainted. Fuck. Muzillion was shocked. He immediately rushed over to hold Xiao Fei and called the hospital. The Mu family was in chaos, but Mu Xiangshan still called the police. The chaos was because Xiao Jin was missing and they couldn't contact him. Of course, they had to call the police. In the hospital, Xiao Fei was still unconscious on the hospital bed. Mu Jinming and Mu Qizhi, who were in the company, rushed back. Looking at Xiao Fei on the hospital bed, they frowned. Not only that, but there was also bad news. Not only had Xiao Jin disappeared, but Song Yanqing had also disappeared. Yesterday, he suddenly fainted. When he woke up, he immediately disappeared. No one knew where he had gone. They had mysteriously lost track of him in the vast imperial capital. Unlike before, at least there was no flight record of him and Xiao Jin going there. There was not even a surveillance video, which showed that he had disappeared in the Song family. But this was too ridiculous. They had never seen Song Yanqing go out. The Song Yanqing family had been turned upside down, but there was no sign of Song Yanqing. The Mu family was under a lot of pressure. It was unknown if the Song family also felt that something was wrong. Mrs. Song had also fainted from crying. Song Suyu was now by his mother's side. In general, there was a terrible guess in everyone's hearts. Song Yanqing had said the same thing to the Song family a few days ago. If he suddenly disappeared, the Song family should not look for him. It would be strange if people would think positively of them when they joined forces. Chapter 11:28. Xiao Fei woke up in the middle of the night. When she woke up, Mu Jinming was guarding her. His eyes were bloodshot. It was obvious that he did not rest well. After all, it was already the middle of the night and he had not closed his eyes. When Xiao Fei woke up, he stretched his head over and asked, "You're awake. Do you want to drink some water?" Xiao Fei only pinched his arm and asked subconsciously, "Where's Jean?" Mu Jinming paused. Seeing Mu Jinming's expression, Xiao Fei realized that Xiao Jin did not come back. She heard Mu Jinming say in a deep voice, "The police did not send back any news." Xiao Fei immediately began to cry. "Did you expect Xiao Jin to say those words to us a few days ago?" Mu Jinming could only think of what Xiao Jin said a few days ago. He also felt terrible and could only say, "We can only think positively." But he also knew that it was not possible. Xiao Fei had never reacted so strongly. She was just a sensitive woman. Even if Xiao Jin was not her biological daughter, she had raised her for more than 20 years. She probably already had a premonition in her heart, which was why she reacted so strongly this time. Xiao Fei cried so hard that she almost fainted. She had just woken up, and crying so violently was not good for her health. Mu Jinming wanted to persuade her, but he did not know how. He understood Xiao Fei's feelings. He could only say, "I'll get Chi Chu and the others to accompany you." Mu Jinming poured a glass of water for Xiao Fei and called Musichu and the others. However, not long after, he heard Mu Xiangshan's overjoyed voice. Come back quickly. Qiao Jin is back. Mu Jinming was stunned. He's back. Grandpa Mu was old and could not stay at the hospital to watch over Qiao Fei, so they let Mu Xiangshan rest at home. Now, he was alone at home. Mu Xiangshan's voice was still happy. Yes, you're back. Do you think Qiao Fei's condition is serious? Why don't I ask Qiao Jin to come to the hospital? No. Mu Jinming looked back at Qiao Fei and immediately rushed in. Qiao Jin is back. Qiao Fei stopped crying and burped, Are you serious? Mu Jinming nodded. Qiao Fei screamed, Go back, I want to go back. Of course, Mu Jinming helped her clean up. Other than fainting, she was fine and didn't need to stay in the hospital. Now that he heard that she was back, of course he couldn't stay any longer. Qiao Jin woke up in his own room. When she woke up, she was lying on the bed, but she could feel a slight change. Her body was moist, as if she had just been fished out of the water. Even the bed beneath her was wet. She got up from the bed, still in a daze. The rules appeared in front of her, as if with a hint of playfulness. As colleagues, I still came to see you. By the way, let me remind you that you're pregnant. Qiao Jin, then, the rules disappeared without saying anything to her. Qiao Jin could clearly feel that she did not lose her power, but she had lost control of the rules. It was as if she did not even have the ability to exchange with the rules. She was more like a powerful array master now, but she no longer had the ability to communicate with time like before. She had also completely lost the ability to devour. She knew why. Devour had returned. Without consciousness, it was more like a rule now. Perhaps after a long time, it would be reborn. But she was no longer Qiao Jin. She was alive again. Chapter 11:29. Qiao Jin blinked. She could feel that she hadn't lost her memories. This was the price and the final gift. She was ultimately different. She was born from the consciousness of the laws. She had given up her power of the laws, but she was once the darling of heaven and earth. She had completely given up her existence as a law, which was equivalent to giving up eternal life. Consciousness could live forever, but humans couldn't. She had everything she used to have, but she was no longer devouring. There was no punishment, so there was no eternal life. Just like how she could be resurrected in the past, she couldn't now. Karma had also disappeared, and she couldn't sense it anymore. Even her sense of karma was becoming blurry. At the same time, she received a warning from karma. It was no longer like before, when the birth of spiritual psychics would become rarer and rarer. In the future, there might not be any more spiritual psychics. They were the last to exist, and it was just a proof. She only had a few decades. After receiving this news, she curled her lips. Eternal life was nothing to her. What she had was enough. Her body seemed to have just been redone. Her skin was almost transparent, as if it was glowing. She got up from the bed and opened the door. She saw Mu Xiangshan sitting on the sofa in the living room in a daze. Perhaps he heard the noise. Mu Xiangshan turned his head, and the cup in his hand fell. Qiao Jin smiled. Old master. It was still the same familiar tone, nothing had changed. Mu Xiangshan stood up abruptly with a complicated expression. Good, it's good that you're back. He didn't ask anything. He turned around and wiped his moist eyes. Then, she happily called Mu Jinming and the others. During this process, she looked at the door. Not long after, Song Yanqing's figure suddenly appeared in the Mu family's living room. At this moment, Old Master was here, so he didn't care at all. When he appeared here and saw Qiao Jin, the smile on his face was like the most beautiful scenery in the world. He walked over and immediately pulled Qiao Jin into his arms. He didn't say anything. The fact that he was holding her in his arms was the best proof. He was still alive, and so was she. The price they paid for giving up was enough for them to experience the most dazzling experience in this world. Mu Xiangshan, although he was old and had seen a lot, if it were an ordinary person, they definitely wouldn't be able to withstand Song Yanqing's performance. However, when he saw the two of them rejoicing as if they had gone through a calamity and were reunited, he sighed in the end. Mu Jinming and the rest were rushing back. When Song Yanqing let go of Qiao Jin, she caressed her stomach and said curiously, "The rules say that I'm pregnant." Song Yanqing paused for a moment and touched Qiao Jin's stomach. Then, with a gentle look in his eyes, he said, "I know." Fortunately, when he stripped the price of karma, he did not strip this little thing away as well. This was the best ending. Perhaps time and the rules thought that there was something wrong with them, but only they knew that sometimes, making a different choice was not necessarily a bad thing. Qiao Jin muttered, "I've never been pregnant." She wasn't pregnant at that time. She didn't expect to be pregnant this time. Song Yanqing chuckled and looked at old Master Mu, who was staring at him. "Grandpa Mu, you're going to be promoted again." Mu Xiangshan looked at the two of them with a complicated expression. Then, he sighed. "This family will be lively in the future." Song Yanqing and Qiao Jin looked at each other and smiled. Then, he called the Song family to inform them. They sat there and waited for the two families to arrive. Chapter 1130. Side story: 4,000 years ago, there were countless countries in this world. Qianzang was just one of them. Mo Jiang was originally the high priest of Qianzang, and his younger brother, Xiao, was the king of Qianzang. The story was very melodramatic. Before Mo Jiang ascended to the position of high priest, he fell in love with the future king of another kingdom. Shi Su. Shi Su approached the high priest with the goal of taking over her kingdom. The high priest did not have any strict rules, but before becoming the high priest, he could not marry. Mo Jiang was originally a powerful array master, and Shi Su was just an ordinary spiritual reader, but his abilities were not weak. The result of their love was that Shi Su brought people to destroy her kingdom. Her younger brother, Xiao, died under Shi Su's blade before he could see her succeed the throne. However, Shi Su's ending was not good either. He did not succeed in taking over Mo Jiang's position. Mo Jiang was an array master, and before he died, he used his abilities to set up an array to harm Shi Su, causing Shi Su to live a life worse than death. When she died, she was only 35 years old. When the Qianzang kingdom gradually disappeared, the last of her people were devoted to Mo Jiang, hoping to revive her and restore the kingdom. Unfortunately, they did not expect that she would be revived thousands of years later. At this time, how could there be a kingdom for Mo Jiang to revive? This memory was gradually recalled by Mo Jiang. After hearing her story, Qiao Jin sighed. "Xia Shi is not Shi Su." "Indeed, he is not. He is much uglier than Shi Su. My taste is not that bad." At that time, she was also blinded by love. She was partly responsible for the destruction of the kingdom, but in the end, the strength of the kingdom was not as strong as Shi Su's. In fact, there would be a day when she finally woke up and used her abilities to make Shi Su's life worse than death. When he died, his kingdom could not escape the covetous eyes of others. Mo Jiang's eyes dimmed as she thought of the clansmen who had revived her. In the end, she could only let them down. Because she could not find Shi Su, she did not even know if he had reincarnated. Now, there was no country that would allow her to reinstate. After all, the higher-ups of this country would not agree to it. Xiao Jin patted her on the shoulder. Your play is about to start. You are a woman who is destined to be popular all over the country. Mo Jiang raised his head and glanced at her. It's global. Xiao Jin, it was a good thing that she had this confidence. Xiao Jin's resurrection was a great thing. Furthermore, she did not lose her abilities. She could still help the spirit group from time to time in the future. The Rakshasa world was sealed, and the demonized psychic masters were gradually heading towards extinction. However, those psychic masters also felt that something bad was going to happen. Psychic readers were becoming rarer and rarer. Initially, He Yao and the others were able to discover a dozen or so spiritual readers every year. However, for the next few years, they didn't discover any new spiritual readers. It seemed that something was gradually reducing the number of spiritual readers. As for the few people that Xiao Jin found, even after the matter was over, Xiao Jin did not abandon them. Of course, they all had better lives now. Furthermore, with the two rich women, Guozhulian and Zhang Qiudong, there was no need to worry about not having anyone to support them. Zhang Qiudong was a newcomer. When she first came, she did not understand. Later, she got along with everyone happily. Her behavior was even worse than Guozhulian's. She even bought a duplex apartment for Meng Qingyu and the others in the capital. When Mo Jiang went to film, she and Guozhulian brought a few people to the place where Mo Jiang was filming every year. They flew all over the world. Mo Jiang was so jealous that his eyes turned red. She was getting more and more popular and had more and more work. There were fans everywhere. Wherever she went, they would not stop. The group of women had an extremely comfortable life. There were a lot of men pursuing them, but under Mo Jiang's teachings, they were not in a hurry to find one. If they did not meet the right person, they did not have to find a man to spend the rest of their lives with. Later, they appeared at Xiao Jin's wedding and when she gave birth to a child. Xiao Jin was pregnant and was still in university. However, they still got married before her belly grew big. At that time, the Song family was quite confused. When Song Yanqing disappeared, they did not understand. Later, when they heard that Xiao Jin was pregnant, they let go of this matter and happily settled the wedding for her. Towards the end of the spirit group, there were fewer and fewer things to do. He Yao was also close to the state of her career. There were fewer and fewer spiritual readers. They probably expected something. In the later half of the year, many people chose to be ordinary people. This society was becoming more and more stable, and strange things were gradually decreasing. Perhaps one day, spiritual readers would no longer exist. However, now that Xiao Jin was pregnant and had a child, the other three brothers in the family were the ones who were urged to get married. This was especially so for Muzilian. In general, the days were always dull, but warm. Perhaps this was what Xiao Jin wanted when she first stepped into the human world. What she wanted was simple happiness. Song Yanqing accompanied her through the best life. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.